The United States approves Ukraine's strikes on Russia. President Trump considers providing Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles. Meanwhile, War Secretary Pete Hegseth organizes a high-stakes meeting with Pentagon generals from around the globe. How did the US get to allowing Ukraine to strike deep inside Russia, and could President Trump send Tomahawks to Ukraine? Kit Kellogg, who serves as Trump's special envoy to Ukraine, has said that President Trump has given Ukraine the green light to carry out long-range strikes inside Russia. Speaking on Fox News, Kellogg pointed to public statements from Trump as well as key administration figures like Vice President J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio as evidence of this position. He said that there are no safe zones for Russian forces and Ukraine should use its full capabilities to strike deep inside Russia. When asked whether Ukrainian forces are allowed to use US weapons for these strikes, Kellogg explained that the permissions have been inconsistent. Sometimes Ukraine received full authorization and other times only partial. However, he stressed that Trump and Commander-in-Chief gives the orders and those orders should be followed without question. Meanwhile, Vice President J.D. Vance confirmed that Trump's administration is discussing whether to supply Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk missiles. He said that while no final decision has been made, the issue is under serious consideration and any move would be based on what Trump sees as the best for U.S. national interests. Vance also commented on the state of diplomatic effort. According to him, Russia has refused to engage in either direct negotiations with Ukraine or trilateral meetings with the US. He tied this to recent Trump remarks, who suggested that Ukraine could retake some of the territory held by Russian forces. Vance says that this assessment reflects the situation on the ground, where Russian troops are suffering heavy losses and failing to make meaningful progress. He added that US remains committed to peace, but warns that progress depends on Russia's willingness to negotiate. Until that happens, he said Russia is facing growing costs for very little strategic gain. Meanwhile, Wall Street Journal reported that Trump told Zelensky he is open to letting Ukraine use long-range US weapons against Russia. According to a report by Wall Street Journal, Trump told Zelensky during a meeting in New York that he is open to allowing Ukraine to use US-supplied long-range weapons to strike targets inside Russia. This marks a potential shift in US policy, though Trump did not make a firm commitment. The conversation took place on September 23rd during a one-on-one meeting between Trump and Zelensky. According to Wall Street Journal, President Zelensky used the opportunity to ask Trump to lift restrictions that currently prevent Ukraine from using US weapons to hit Russian territory. The Wall Street Journal reports that Trump indicated he was open to lifting this restriction, but did not make a final decision. Two sources familiar with the matter, one American and one Ukrainian, told journals that Trump listened to Zelensky's request and expressed willingness to consider it. However, there was no definite policy change during the meeting. During the conversations, Zelensky asked specifically for permission to use ATACMS, long-range missiles the US has provided against Russian targets. He also reportedly asked for Tomahawk cruise missile, which have significantly greater range than ATACMS and would give Ukraine the ability to strike deeper inside Russia. This request goes beyond what Ukraine has previously received from the US. Trump's administration maintains rules that prohibit Ukraine from using US weapons to strike inside Russia. According to Wall Street Journal, US has set up an internal approval process under which Secretary of War Pete Hegseth must personally approve or deny any Ukrainian request to use these weapons in such strikes. So far, the Department of War has denied those requests, effectively keeping a ban in place. The report adds that this policy has been in effect for months, and Ukraine has been blocked from launching long-range US missiles at Russia. Ukrainian delegation is expected to travel to Washington to meet with War Secretary Pete Hegseth to continue discussions. According to Wall Street Journal, these talks will focus on the possibility of lifting the restrictions and expanding the scope of U.S. weapons used by Ukraine. If Trump decides to allow the use of long-range weapons against Russia, this would mark a significant policy change from current U.S. limitations and could have serious implications for the war and U.S.-Russia relations. While the President Trump did not make a formal promise to lift the restrictions, the fact that he expressed openness is seen by many experts as an important development. Some defense analysts believe such move could help Ukraine to gain ground in war, especially given recent Russian offensives. Wall Street Journal knows that Trump's statement is not a finalized decision and that the process to lift or alter this restriction would likely involve further reviews by the Department of War. It's also not clear whether Congress would need to be involved if the U.S. were to send such weapons, Tomahawk cruise missiles, to Ukraine. This report comes amid a broader debate in Washington and among NATO allies how far to go in supporting Ukraine's efforts. While some argue that giving Ukraine the ability to strike in Russia would change the war, the outcome of this conflict, others caution that such step risks so-called escalation. Ukrainian officials have confirmed that they sometimes carry out long-range strikes on Russia using domestically produced weapons, but without coordination with the United States. Meanwhile, War Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered an emergency in-person meeting of nearly top U.S. military commanders, according to the Washington Post. The large-scale gathering set for September 13th at Marine Corps University in Quantico, Virginia, will include hundreds of generals, admirals, and senior enlisted advisors. This kind of mass assembly is highly unusual and has raised eyebrows across the Pentagon community. Current and former officials told newspapers they could not recall another instance where Secretary of Defense summoned so many senior leaders and so little notice ahead. The order applies to commanding officers and requires travel from military theaters across the globe: Europe, Asia, Middle East, US zone. These are senior US officers responsible for managing US forces worldwide. According to the Washington Post, Trump later confirmed he will attend the meeting and speak to generals, calling it the opportunity to tell them we love them. Trump's presence is likely to turn the meeting into a high-profile political event. Washington Post reports that some officials see it as a message of control and discipline, while others worry it could be a start of major leadership reshuffling or efforts to demand royalty. Hegseth's move allows a series of aggressive changes at the Pentagon since taking over his position. He has already ordered 20% reduction in a number of generals and admirals. Multiple senior officers have been fired or forced out, including Navy and Air Force leaders, as part of what Hegseth claims is a military reset. According to the Post, these changes have already unsettled parts of the military leadership. Some now worry that the upcoming gathering may be used to reinforce this direction or remove more dissenting voices. Post notes that gathering such a large number of senior military officers in one place creates potential security risks. Some defense officials have quietly questioned whether it's wise to pull key commanders from active operational posts, especially during global tensions. In addition, travel costs and security arrangements for hundreds of generals and their aides are expected to run into the millions of dollars, adding further criticisms from inside military. Also, analysts told the Post that the meeting could serve multiple purposes: deliver a unified message from the administration to commanders, reshape military leadership, possibly leading to more personnel changes, pressure officers to align with the administration vision, or possibly, as some worry, blurs the lines between civilian and military leadership. As reported by the Washington Post, War Secretary Hegseth's sudden decision to gather the nation's top military commanders has alarmed some current officials, but with internal changes already underway in Pentagon, what happens in Quantico on September 13th could have far-reaching implications for the American armed forces. That's all for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and glory to Ukraine!